Okay, welcome back to members of 121 Community Church in Grapevine, Texas, in our ongoing study in The Spiritual Life by Edgar Sheffield Brightman, published in 1942. We have reached the middle of the manuscript. This is the pivot point of the entire presentation. We're looking at Chapter 4. We're looking at pages 103 to 142. And it is on the Spirit as divine, but more significantly, it is about the Spirit and signification. And it really gives us a great look at Brightman's system and the way that his system works, especially the second moment. So we're going to look at signification here, but this is the midpoint of the manuscript. Begin by looking at block 1. Moving beyond subjectivism, Brightman begins with ethics. There is a spiritual impulse at work in every human being that strives toward value. Faith and spirit is the backbone of true humanity, period. It provides our rational principles that allow us to live in harmony with existence and the divine within existence. Principles like the good, the true, the beautiful, and the holy. Brightman says this forces us outside ourselves to examine objective reference for value. What is our objective reference for value? That means we negate the subjectivist point of view. Subjectivism says that spiritual life is exclusively human, mere emotion. That must be negated, says Brightman. Everything real is given in the form of subjectivity. That is true. That is a truth of subjectivity, but subjectivism as an exclusive position has to be negated. Truth as value is always known truth. The knowing consciousness takes us forward to counter all subjectivism. But the key there is to the fact that the real is given in the form of subjectivity, as positing, basically, the realm of positing. That's what Brightman proposes. The realm of positing is that realm of where we posit the real. And we posit the real as an internal externality, as a filter through which we view the world. So that statement is key. Everything real is given in the form of subjectivity. So countering the subjectivism, we look at note 3. Values are reference to something universal. These values are tested by rational coherence. They're testing of coherence, organizing them as systematic and related. All values are systematically arranged and related to each other through relational signs. This testing elevates any truth claim to becoming a true value. And that means we enlist dialogue with others at Aristotle's Da Kunta threshold. All human claims are to be tested by the rule of coherence. So in this first moment, we get an introductory triad. We begin with spiritual impulse. It's that which resides in humanity as a striving for value, but it's in need of going out of itself for verification through coherence. Then we pass through negation of subjectivism. Values are not exclusively human. They are more than emotion. They do bear the truth. They are truth-bearing ideals. And that leads us to verification through rational coherence. It is the critique of all value claims through the logic of faith, which raises value claim to true value. And this was, of course, covered in his Philosophy of Religion, which was written 2 years prior to this, where we get an initial reminder of this triad before we get into the key moment of block 2. So a reminder is that we do enclose that triad of spiritual impulse, negation of subjectivism, and verification through rational coherence. Now we can take a look at block 2. And here we're going to look at ideals functioning as IDOS signs, or IDOS values that function as signs. Positing the objectivity of ideals, order and system lead to truth. Truth claims must pass through the test of ideals. This forces us to posit the objectivity of ideals. That is where we surpass subjectivism with the objectivity of ideals. Not every value is an ideal value. Ideal equals that which ought to be, or value oughtness. Ideals are signs that guide the production of intrinsic value. They're IDOS ideals functioning as signs. That's the key statement here in block 2. There are IDOS ideals that function as signs in Brightman's system. They are the IDOS ideals that are posited as reality, as real. An ideal is a sign that functions as a formal linguistic cause as the positing of the real. Ideals as signs are those that should become actual. They become posited as real. Ideals are prescribed and posited. They judge all value claims, they prescribe the true, and they posit the real. That statement is a summary statement of what Brightman's system is all about. We enter into dialogue with others to raise value claim to the true. Then, ideals are prescribed as true. Then they are posited as real. So prescription leads to positing, but prescription comes out of that de Kunta threshold, where we raise up value claim to true value. So that's Brightman's system. First, we prescribe the true, then we posit the real. Ideals as universals describe the objectively real for Brightman. And it's all about anticipation. We posit the ideals because it is an anticipatory work. We have an intentionality toward the objectively real value. It's an anticipation of the real which is beyond us. We aspire to transform axiogenetic possibility into axiosoteric event. That is our aspiration. It's an aspiration to transform. The task of the self is to learn the objective conditioning of value. So note 4, the objective conditioning of value, man's spirit is seeking harmony with the Holy Spirit. Values are subjective in their experience. Ideals are objective in their origin. There's your differentiation. Values are subjective in experience. Ideals are the posited objective in their origin. Intersubjectivity cannot be reliable on its own. It must be tested by coherence itself. An ideal is objective in its purpose, the purpose of the divine. A purpose to reach axiosoteric event. That brings us on to block 3, and we're going to move out of the theoretical into the practical now, which Brightman does with his system. So we're going to move out of in block 3. We're going to take a look at objective spirit plus posited IDOS ideals leads to a practical theology. He's going to transition to a language of theology here in block 3. We begin with a language of signs and worship. Man's spiritual aspiration is speech within the divine spirit, a posited speech of signification. The ideal is the plan of God's mind, and worship is opening the self to the elevating influence of the mind of God in creation. The self seeks to be in harmony with the divine influence, and worship equals the Spirit in man encountering the objective Holy Spirit in reality, in the real. Now, spiritual life is empowered by prayer. Confronting God results in elevating one's life into the ideal. We reflect on the self in light of divine purpose. We view life as catalogically. Worship enables man's spiritual perception. Hupakuo, perception. The spiritual self passes through the test of worship. We are tested through worshipful prayer. And the divine response is always enabling us with dunamis power. It's an enabling with dunamis power, the potentiality of power, through the disclosure of ideals. Disclosure creates potential power through the disclosure of ideals. So we look at this dunamis power in note 3, the energia of theos, or the actualization of God's purpose, is operative at the level of personality. This is where we encounter God. Human personality encountering personalistic God in objective reality. That's key for Brightman, obviously, but it is operative at the level of personality. In personality, the divine mysterion is encountered. We are related to a personal spirit. We experience the witness of spirit as experiencing the otherness of the divine spirit. And this system is beyond concept. It is a transcendent system. That's why we must posit as an anticipation. The power of spirit is greater than man's power to understand it. The spiritual life is always, in a sense, incomplete and in need of further dialectic. Our hope is in the perpetual evidence of divine spirit. The dialectic of the logic of faith is an ongoing dialectic. Remember, it's experimental positing, outgoing desire for ideal, and the return moment of interpretive construction. That logic of faith is an ongoing dialectic that is unending. It is eternal as the kingdom is eternal. It's an ongoing dialectic. And it remains an ongoing dialectic, which Brightman labels as the logic of faith. Faith is a logic. Faith is a dialectical logic. This is the pivotal lesson. This is the middle of the book. And Brightman tells us that we do believe in objectivity of spirit. And we do practice prescribing the truth and positing the real. We do participate in objective spirit through prescribing the true and positing the real. That brings us out of the theoretical and into the practical, and once we get into the practical, then we enter into things like worship and prayer and power and transcendence. Worship and prayer and power, which points to transcendence, the fact that it's an anticipation of kingdom that we look at. We anticipate the spiritual realm in reality. We see that which is disclosed. It's a disclosure that empowers anticipatory positing. I love this lesson, but I love this lesson especially because of the second moment here. I think if you just really concentrate on Block 2, ideals functioning as IDOS values that become signs, I think you'll have the key to Brightman's entire system. It's all about a logic of faith that does prescribe the true after it evolves out of the Dagunta threshold. But then from there, from the true, it goes on to positing the real as an anticipatory sign model. As an anticipatory sign model, or anticipatory ideal model, because it's basically IDOS ideals functioning as signs. So out of the true, or out of the Dagunta threshold, we prescribe the true. Out of the prescription of the true, we posit the real. And through the filter of the real, we enter into praxis ministry, practical theology. This is a beautiful lesson, a powerful lesson. It's the key lesson, in my opinion. I think it informs everything we've already covered, and it informs everything that is to come. It's the middle of the book. We'll pick up next time in chapter 5.